Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stacey Storino, and welcome back to the Mama Saga, where this Marvel loving mama is a mother and an attorney by day, and someone who loves to review Marvel movies, comic books, and Disney Plus series by night. Although it's around 6 o'clock in the morning my time, so here I am, and I just pinned down below my primer playlist series of all the She-Hulk videos that I did leading up to now. Some of them are looking at the basic backgrounds of She-Hulk, others are reviewing trailers, and I did catch several Easter eggs that I think will be important to the series, her trajectory in the MCU going forward, or both. So if you missed any of those videos along the way, I did pin the playlist link to the first comment down below on the live, and I'll be sure to get that done on the replay. This is going to be my live stream after party reaction to the first episode of Miss Marvel that dropped. No, She-Hulk that dropped. We did Miss Marvel already. So just like I did with Miss Marvel, every week for the 9 weeks that we're going to have those 9 episodes drop for She-Hulk, I will do a live stream like reaction and after party. And you are welcome to join, and you are welcome to leave any questions or comments if you think there's anything I missed or anything like that in terms of Easter eggs or nuances or whatever. You are welcome to put it in the comments section down below. Okay, so I'm going to throw out the disclaimer just to cover myself, okay? And I'm going to put it in the comments down below. Spoiler alert, if you didn't watch, let me put on my glasses while I do this. If you didn't watch the first episode of She-Hulk yet, please watch it and then come back so nothing is spoiled for you. Okay, so I took care of that. I threw out my spoiler alert. I put down the link to my playlist. So now with all that housekeeping out of the way, I've covered myself. Here we go. Okay, so keep in mind, I am a female attorney since 1998, so I love She-Hulk a lot. I love She-Hulk so much. Let me just grab it. I forgot to do it because I was so excited. If you collect Funko Pops, you know that this one's hard to get. This is She-Hulk as a lawyer or an attorney. So this is like a huge, huge pride and joy possession for me because it was a very limited edition. You will pay dearly to get this version of her. And I got it years before I even knew that a She-Hulk series was going to come out, because I'm a female lawyer the way Jennifer Walters is. And for the longest time, anybody who was friends of mine who understood comics alone knew that I, loved them. And whenever I was asking them, like, what would be the superhero that you would put me as, it was always a She-Hulk, and so I'm tickled pink that I not only have this particular Funko Pop because it's hard to get, but I'm also tickled pink that they have this series out. Now, only the first episode dropped. It's hardly like I had early access to it the way other Marvel theorists did, at least some of them. So I'm with you. I'm watching these things live. They drop Thursdays, not Wednesdays. I think Disney Plus / Marvel Studios learned their lesson not to drop 2 big series on the same day with their episodes, because Obi-Wan competed with Miss Marvel for attention, and that made it hard for Miss Marvel to get like the traction on every episode that she really deserved. The storytelling there was very great. Miss Marvel factors in very heavily to what's going to happen in the MCU moving forward. She's too important of a character for them not to do all the table setting that they did and with some of the folks that are in her world, because they're going to continue to factor in. They did comic book wise, but I think they're going to more seriously in the MCU as well. And if you don't know why I say this, definitely I have a playlist for Miss Marvel if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do so. We cover Marvel and nothing but here. So let's get into my reactions and the Easter eggs that I found. And I'm sure when I go back and I look at them again, I might find additional ones, but this is the first time I watched. This is a fresh take. Okay, so a normal amount of rage is episode 1's title, and it's important for several reasons. When I get to the end of all my observations, I'm going to tie up in a bow the two main reasons why I think a normal amount of rage is actually a really good title for this episode. So I do notice that you get the standard opening for the Marvel Studios logo. It doesn't turn green. There's no fancy schmancy music or anything like that. You open up with the walls in Jennifer Walters' office are green. So, of course, Hulk green. Why not? That's a little on the nose. Jennifer Walters is saying to the camera, what is the obligation of those who have power? Do they have the obligation or the duty to protect those who do not have power? And as she's saying what she's saying, she's looking dead on at the camera. As an attorney, I already knew from the background that she's not in court, so she must be practicing either an opening statement or a closing statement. It is not unusual at all for attorneys, whether they're male, female, however they identify, to practice and rehearse, whether there's anyone in their office or not, opening statements, closing statements when they do trials. Even if you go into mediations or arbitrations that are kind of like mini trials, they're like trials light, you still will practice a lot of things. To be fair, I mean, I'm admitted in New York State only. It seems like the She-Hulk series is going on in California. I'm only admitted in New York. I've been practicing since, I got the letter saying I passed the New York State Bar in 1998. December 1998, and the law office that I was working for as a paralegal for 6 years said, okay, we're ready for you to be an attorney, and shoved me out into court the next day with permission of the court and all parties. And I had my little letter and I passed the bar. So that's since December of 1998. So when I look at the She-Hulk series, every episode that drops, I'm going to be giving you an additional layer of analysis that other Marvel theorists likely won't. Because they're not attorneys. I understand the backstories of a lot of these people. They're not attorneys. So, hey, what's going on, X-Man 110? All right, cool, yeah. So I'm an attorney, and I'm going to tell you right now, when they open up on that scene of Jennifer rehearsing what she's going to say in court later, which she does towards the end of that episode, she's delivering the line she rehearsed. That's a commonplace thing. She did happen to have two other people in the office, a male associate at her law office, as well as her paralegal. But it's not unusual for us attorneys to be practicing alone in our office. It becomes something that, in terms of our corporate culture, we're used to seeing people talking in their office by themselves because they're practicing their extemporaneous speech to make it as smooth as possible. In front of a jury, or if you're in a mediation or an arbitration, in front of the mediator or the arbitrator. In front of a jury, if there is one at a trial. Not every trial has to have a jury, by the way. You can just have what's called a bench trial, and it's just the judge. It's important that she has a trial, and it's important who we see at the end, because he factors into her whole professional and also superhero trajectory moving forward. It was so in the comics, and it's so in the MCU now, which I like, but I'll get to that in a minute. So she's got her opening statement where she's talking about the obligation of those who have power and whether or not they should be protecting people who don't have any power at all or have less power. This is important not just for the case that she is arguing against. She's with the district attorney's office. That becomes clear in a bit. So this was probably like a criminal trial. Some criminal trials have civic arms to them too. I'm not a criminal attorney. I've never been. But I've worked in tandem with district attorneys' offices on wrongful death cases. The worst wrongful death case I ever had was that of a 3-year-old child that died. That was horrible. And it was criminal negligence. But then I also had the wrongful death trial part of it. That was an absolute mess. That was the worst case I ever had. Kid deaths are the worst. But no, Jennifer's case apparently doesn't involve that, thank goodness. So it seems that from the way you hear in the beginning of the episode and towards the end, you hear a bit more. It definitely has to do with property damage. And I guess since she's with the district attorney's office in episode 1, somebody went and just criminally destroyed a whole bunch of property. And so she's on behalf of the people in the state of California as she is suing whomever on the other side of the equation, because they owe for all like the property damage that they apparently wreaked. We don't know too much more about that fact pattern. We may or may not in episode 2. It may not be important. What's important is who was sitting across from her at the end of that episode. Okay, so we pan backwards and we see that for sure Jennifer's rehearsing. Like I said, that's very normal for we attorneys to do. The line that she closes with basically is those with the most power have the most to answer for. I think this is an open loop in storytelling, in stage writing, screenplay writing, and such. You have what's called Chekhov's gun. You don't introduce a gun in a scene or in a play or a show without having that gun do something before the end of whatever it is, an episode, a show, a screenplay. So Chekhov's gun is important. It can also be referred to open loop and closed loop. So when she's closing out her statement and she says those with the most power have the most to answer for, that's opening up a loop that may have everything to do with her before the series is over. So Dennis is the male attorney that's there, and then you have a female attorney sitting there as well. Turns out it's Nikki. Turns out it's her best friend. Dennis is watching her and is like, yeah, that's good, but you know what? I'll take the closing for you, which I hate to say this. You know, again, I told you guys at the beginning of the live, I started going to court in December of 1998. I started practicing as an attorney at that point onward. Unfortunately, it was not unusual as a female attorney to have a male attorney say whether he thought he was being nice or not. Oh, I'll take the closing. I'll handle that for you. And it's like, no, I didn't ask you. I can handle it. I can handle it myself, right? Like, cool. I rehearsed everything. I handled the whole case. I filed everything. We're ready to go. And you're just going to kind of swoop in and take everything. That can happen in corporate America where there's no lawyers, involved, or in any other workplace situation. Somebody sails in and goes, oh, thanks for all your hard work. I'll take it from here. So very smoothly, Jennifer handled it and was like, no, you don't have to do that. Nikki, who's her best friend and a paralegal, basically physically takes out the trash, if you will, pushes Dennis out in the hallway and slams the door shut. So it's like, nope, we're done. We don't need you. So, and then she says, my little baby genius is going to be a district attorney someday. So that's a little confusing to me. It sounds like she's working in the district attorney's office already. I think what Nikki meant to say was that someday Jennifer will be the head DA herself. It sounds to me, the way things are playing out in this episode, that she's either a junior ADA or maybe a senior ADA, a junior assistant district attorney or senior assistant district attorney. And it sounds like Dennis, who just got kicked out of her office, is as well. Then Nikki says to her, if all else fails, you can Hulk out. And then she leaves and it's like, oh, we've already gotten to the place where Jennifer is the She-Hulk. We don't know that because this is only like 2 minutes in to that episode. So already Jennifer Walters addresses the camera. She breaks the fourth wall. And we're only like 2+ minutes into this thing. And she basically assures everybody that she's got this, but oh yeah, that's right. I am a Hulk. So then we go a couple of months prior. You have the overlay on the screen that confirms a couple months prior, she was hanging out with her cousin Bruce Banner, who of course is the Hulk, and they're on a car ride. Now you saw quite a bit of this. If you saw any of the trailers leading up to it, you saw this next minute or so where they're driving along and she's like bugging her cousin about Captain America or Steve Rogers and whether or not he was a virgin, before, the Battle of Earth and all of that. Did he lose his virginity? Did he not? So she's a single lady and he's a good looking guy and like the symbol of America and pride and all that. So of course she's kind of like mini crushing on him. And so she's all obsessed about whether or not he was a virgin at any given time. And it's funny, what they didn't show you in the trailer was Bruce was talking about a device that was on his wrist that was helping him in terms of his Hulk states. And he had mentioned that to her, this is a prototype and it's helping me. And he used all of his, technology and everything, the smart Hulk, scientists to create that. And meanwhile, like the best thing that Jennifer could come up with was in the car also. And that was Cheetos with chopsticks in them. And he's like, Cheetos with chopsticks. And she's like, so you don't get Cheetos fingers. You know how your fingers get stained with orange if you eat like Cheetos or cheese puffs or whatever. So he's built a device that's like all complicated and she's doing Cheetos and chopsticks. It's definitely comparing where these two characters are at this snapshot of time. So then the Sakaar ship shows up. She's not ready for it. So of course, to avoid the Sakaar spaceship, right? From Thor Ragnarok, remember Sakaar, the trash planet, Hulk escaped, Thor escaped. So of course the Sakaar ships are looking for the Grand Master's Grand Champion. That apparently didn't stop while, if you saw Thor Ragnarok, the Grand Master was like, everybody go searching for my great hero. We didn't ever see him say that they had to stop, right? So hold on just a second. Thank you for your patience. All right, so it's funny. So the Sakaar ship is there. They're obviously tracking Hulk down. They get into the car accident. They go off the cliff. The car's rolling. And you see the Cheetos streaking across the screen. Jen gets out of the car. She's gushing blood from one arm. She's got an open wound. Bruce is apparently knocked unconscious. He's not in Hulk form as she pulls open the door to get her cousin out, drags him out of the car. He's still got his sling on from his injured arm from him doing his like snap back in Endgame. So his blood, because he's got wounds too, of course, goes into her arm where the open wound is. And then you see like her veins and everything, of course, just under her skin go green. And their blood has blended and she hulks out. You can see her looking at the surface of her car, the way the sunlight's hitting the metal. It's kind of like a mirror. It's like a funhouse mirror effect. And she's freaking out because it's like, what the heck is this? And then he hulks out. He comes to, he hulks out because anger, rage, pain can definitely make them do that. And she runs through the forest and the screen cuts to black. She wakes up in the woods. She's alone. It's dark. It's clear that she's lost. She doesn't know where she is. She runs to civilization. She goes into a back entrance of the bar that's there in this little town thing that she finds. As she's going up the hall from the back entrance, there is a QR code. So I didn't take the time to scan it. I'm very sure, I would bet any amount of money as I'm sitting here, that if you scan it, it's going to be the Savage She-Hulk, the first comic in that series, because that's when She-Hulk was introduced. And she was introduced, I should say, with her own comic, instead of being warmed up in another like comic, like as a crossover or, the Avengers come across her or something. She came out with her own comic from nowhere. Marvel did this because of two reasons. Number one, the Hulk television series was really huge. They had David Banner instead of Bruce Banner, but it was otherwise the Hulk as we know him from the comics. That TV show did so well that they were like, ooh, we want to ride on the coattails of this. So they just literally stuck the She-Hulk in her own comic. That first run didn't last horribly long. Then they tried a second run. They tried to experiment with her. It still kind of didn't work. And then she had stints with the Avengers and with the Fantastic Four. Then Dan Slott kind of had a run with her. Dan Slott was the writer who really gave her the story that focused more on her balance between lawyer and single woman and superhero. And Dan Slott's stories explored the whole concept of superhuman law more. It was also, the comics were a little bit funnier and a little bit more entertaining. And she definitely was breaking the fourth wall before then. She did it before Deadpool ever did it in the comics, just in case you didn't know that. But, you know, the second reason why Marvel threw out the She-Hulk series originally, I think in 1979, was because they were afraid that the company that they had sold the rights to the Hulk to at that point in time would turn around and have their own She-Hulk to ride on the coattails of that TV series. So they were like, no, there was no She-Hulk. So we didn't sell you the rights to She-Hulk. So we're going to put out a whole She-Hulk comic book series. But they kind of flailed around for decades to figure out what to do with the poor girl. I'm not entirely sure, other than like the section of the Dan Slott run for her. And again, I'm a female attorney, so maybe that's why I like that one the best. You can let me know in the comments down below if Dan Slott's run was the best for her, in your opinion, or somebody else's was. Stan Lee was around for one episode, and then he basically went off to handle other things. So he wasn't big time involved with her. But I kind of like the Dan Slott run the best of her. And I think that this miniseries is going to borrow heavily from that, because we do get into superhero law in the Dan Slott run of the comic books. And one of the Easter eggs that I talk about in the commercial trailer that they dropped recently really shows you where her career is going to go. It's eventually going to completely eclipse her being in the law office. She's going to go off to work with the Living Tribunal. And if you're not sure how that works, because the Living Tribunal's already been shown in like 4 different Easter eggs in different shows, Loki season 1, you know, Thor Love and Thunder, been hinted at several times. And they're definitely moving more into the cosmic phase of the whole Marvel run. So just going to say, if you haven't seen that video, you should, because when I analyze that commercial, the Easter egg is hidden in a place that you wouldn't know to look. Of course, it's an Easter egg, but it really shows the trajectory of where she's going to go professionally as well as a superhuman. And I love it. And I'm glad that they have that, because it does mean that we're going to lean heavily into her intellect and the law and how it connects everyone, not just on Earth, but cosmically as well. It's so cool. So do scan that QR code. It's when she goes into the back of the bar. Then she goes into the ladies' room. She looks into a mirror. She realizes at this point she's definitely 100% back in human form. But of course, she's all beat up looking and bloody and all. And a bunch of nice ladies who were drinking at the bar go into the bathroom, and they do a very typical girl thing. Girl, you know, did somebody beat you up? Do you need help? And she's like, no. And they're cleaning her up. They're putting makeup on her. They're giving her clothes, because the clothes that she's in is ripped. Who has an extra shirt? Who has an extra jacket? They let her borrow a phone so she can call Bruce so that he can come and get her, which is important because she doesn't have her phone or anything on her. So she goes outside the bar, outside the front, because now she's looking a bit more presentable. And she's waiting for Bruce to show up to get her. She's accosted by this group of men who, it's a bar. They're drunk. She doesn't look so bad now. But they piss her off because she's just like, no, my cousin's coming to get me. And they get all nasty, and she hulks out, and you do see that she's like punching somebody. And then the screen fades to black. It's the next day. Morning sunshine shows that it's the very next day. She awakens in a bedroom now, but she doesn't know where she is. You hear the ocean. So if you've watched enough of the trailers, you figure out at this point, okay, she's on her cousin Bruce's like island or whatever. It turns out later, it is confirmed it's in Mexico. So she's no longer in the United States. She's certainly not in California. There's clothes there for her. She gets dressed. She runs out. And it's cool. You see the first of what's like 4 different Iron Man Easter eggs. So I'm going to tell you right now, they wouldn't be so heavy-handed with 1, 2, 3, 4 different Iron Man Easter eggs if they weren't going to bring him back into the MCU. How they do it, we're in the multiverse saga. So they have a bunch of different gateways to bring that character back into the scope of active things in the MCU or Earth 616. Could they have done it before the multiverse saga? Colorably, no. But now they can. They can bring back characters from the dead if they wish, so to speak, by bringing in alternate versions of them from other universes. And I think they're going to be doing that not too long down the road because, like I said in the beginning, this is Chekhov's gun. They've opened up a loop, but so they have to close it at some point in their storytelling. Do I think that they're going to do it before She-Hulk Attorney at Law season 1 is over? Not necessarily, but since we already know from San Diego Comic-Con 2022 that in phases 5 and 6, we've got everything building up to, what is now the multiverse saga officially. Phase 4 was swept into that too. We know that you have Avengers, Kang Dynasty, and then also a couple months down the road, if things don't get booted in the same year, you're going to have part 2 to that kind of big crescendo and ending, which is going to be Avengers Secret Wars. We know, because they've said it already, that She-Hulk's going to be a part of that. We know, obviously, we're going to have a new Avengers team assembled, from the titles. You know that along the way in phases 5 and 6, we're going to start reassembling a team of Avengers. Is everybody who's dead or otherwise, like Captain America explained off the stage, are they coming back? Not necessarily, but I think Iron Man is too pivotal to the story of the Avengers to just kill him off, and that's that. I also think the fans absolutely freaked out and took his death the worst, and don't appreciate it. And I think, Marvel is really good at fan service, and I think Iron Man's too important to the story of the Avengers to just be like, done. So, or he just gets killed as part of the Illuminati in friggin' Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Even if they had introduced a version of Iron Man and killed him off, I'm glad they didn't bring in a Robert Downey Jr. to do that, because that would have been too much. We've already killed him off once and nobody wanted that. Now you're going to kill him off again. That's a bit too savage even for Marvel. Although, if you look at my Ant-Man playlist, I've already predicted what's going to happen when Kang encounters Team Ant-Man, and it isn't going to be pretty, and it can't be pretty. Kang is a much worse enemy than Thanos ever was. And they have to establish that early on. They really do. So Ant-Man Quantumania is going to be like drenched with blood. I know that it's going to. All right. So, so the first Iron Man Easter egg shows up when Jennifer comes out. She sees her cousin's place, like, the island part of it, and she rests her hand on an Iron Man faceplate or mask. And it's all beat up, scratched up, scraped up. It could very well have been from when he died through the events of Endgame. It's just beat to crap. So she's just touching it very totemically. That's the first of 4 Iron Man Easter eggs. So then her cousin comes out in Smart Hulk form. He makes a point that it's called Smart Hulk. He said, it wasn't my idea. You never have a choice with these names. And meanwhile, she's going to end up being called She-Hulk, and she's not going to like it either. But just like Miss Marvel, when everybody was trying to call her Nightlight, she's like, I hate that name. She can end up establishing herself as Miss Marvel. Kamala Khan did. But a lot of times, Bruce is right. The public names you, and you just kind of run with it. So he did with the Hulk, and then Smart Hulk. So he says to her, you never have a choice with these names. He establishes that they're in Mexico. that it's an island that he went off to so that he could learn to control himself and keep the public safe at the same time. He did tell her he called her parents, because they are relatives, to let them know that she's okay, she's with him, there was a car accident, she's recuperating. But he says that this island and pretty much everything on it, including his lab, which he goes down into, he said, Tony built it for me a few years ago. He clarifies that it's Tony Stark. And then second, so this is kind of like the second Iron Man Easter egg. And he said he promised me that one day he'd just swing by and take it back. And so, yes, it's poignant because sure, Iron Man died in Avengers Endgame, but like I said, I really do think that now that we're in the multiverse saga, we're already on 2 Easter eggs within a minute or so of each other, where I think they are going to bring him back into the series. Again, he's just too important to the Avengers, and the fans are way upset about it. And I think you have a hard time telling the story of the Avengers without having him in it. So I think they had it be poignant and sad. Yes, Bruce Banner lives largely by himself, and he is lonely and he is sad. And Tony used to hang out with him there a lot during the blip and during the 5 years that everybody who was gone, and it was a sad time, and they were hanging out with each other, and he was company to the Hulk, who otherwise wouldn't have had any company anyway. That was the Hulk's choice, though. Once he knew he was kind of in control, especially once he knew he was in Smart Hulk form, he didn't have to stay by himself. That was a choice that he made. He may have the best of intentions to protect the public, but come on. I think he stayed at the fair a little bit too long, and he's kind of in a playpen of safety too long. And that becomes a little bit obvious as the episode plays out. So he does explain to his cousin that what they encountered was a Sakaran spaceship. He does open the loop there and says he has to investigate things to figure out what's going on with that. I already told you, I think it's the Grandmaster saying, I want my champion back, go get him. So they've been tracking him down, but we'll see how they play that out. So Bruce explains to her that what happened was she, like he, has a rare, like genetic blood type DNA based combination that allows them to synthesize like lethal amounts of gamma radiation and survive. They go into Hulk form, but they survive. And in fact, he makes the point that her blood is so advanced that her commingling of blood with his and his with hers allowed him to completely heal his arm. And she goes, well, that's because I'm better than you. So already you see the confidence that Jennifer Walters has. She has a lot of confidence. She's not bulletproof with her confidence. No one truly is. But I love how they are showing pretty much off the jump that she's like, oh, okay, no, in the beginning of the scene, no, you don't take over the closing statement for me. I've got this. When she's on the island in Mexico with her cousin and he's like, oh, your blood healed me because I'm better than you. Automatically, she's got a sense of confidence that I don't necessarily feel She-Hulk had before in the comics at times. I like the fact that they're giving her a firm foundation. And then he calls her Smug Hulk. Or she calls him Smug Hulk. And then later on, he calls her Smug Hulk back. But what's also interesting is this is a little bit of a flip, if you will, from the comic book origin story of her with the original first run of She-Hulk in the Marvel Comics, Savage She-Hulk. Part of her origin story in the comic books was that she got shot by some crime boss's thugs that she was prosecuting the crime boss, and her cousin saved her with a blood transfusion. This is a flip because there's no crime boss that she's prosecuting from what you see from her practicing her closing statement. This is a civil case about property damage. There's no thugs tracking them down. Nobody's shooting her. They were in a car accident, and it wasn't a purposeful blood transfusion like it was in Savage She-Hulk, the first episode. This was like an accidental blood transfusion. And Bruce was the one that was in the position of strength and he saved her life in the comics. They flipped it in the first episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, where her blood was superior to his, and healed him instead. She hadn't meant it, but that's how it worked out. And of course, her reaction shows she's nice and confident because I'm better than you. And the whole time that he's teaching her to be a Hulk, you see a lot of this play out in the trailers leading up to now. She's confident. She's like, I'm nailing all this. I've got this. You know, but she's also more invested in controlling herself so that she can go back to the life that she had before. At no point in time is she like, okay, Bruce, I'm going to stay with you in your like fortress of solitude out here in Mexico. It's beautiful. It's cool drinking with you. And we can't get drunk and stuff like that. You know, that's fun. But I want to go back to my friends. I want to go back to my job. You know, I was looking for a promotion. I've got a trial to finish. I'm not going to stop my life just because this happened to me. So she's very single-minded in her focus. Bruce didn't have that when he became the Hulk. With her, she was very single-minded in her focus. I have to control myself so I can get my life back. I have to control myself so I can get my career back. And also his mentioning that her blood type was a little bit better than his. She was able to heal him with her blood. She was able to metabolize the gamma rays better. That does show that she's in a position to control herself more anyway, genetically, physically, but like mentally and emotionally, she's got a reason to control herself. She makes the point that she doesn't want to be a Hulk really at all. She just got her own office. She says she just got her own business cards. She couldn't have been an attorney for very, very long if she never worked anywhere where she got business cards in an office. So she must be a relatively green lawyer, like, you know, maybe 2 to 5 years. I remember when I was a lawyer, I did get an office, but I'd worked at that firm like with a window and a view and everything automatically. But I'd worked at that office for 6 years as a paralegal. I went to school at night, and then they gave me an office because I busted my butt. But she's like, I just got an office. I just got business cards. I'm really on a roll where I am. I don't want to be a Hulk. I don't want to give up being an attorney. So Bruce is like, the best thing for you to do is to avoid stressful situations and stay away from people, like he's doing, right? But that was his choice. She's like, I can't do that and do my job. So again, she's very single-minded in her focus. If I can't not be a Hulk, then I will learn how to have my business and how to have my life despite it. And he keeps saying, this is a multi-year journey. You know, I traced all the steps to my evolution. I put it in a binder to like record everything that happened to me. I guess it's a syllabus now. And she's like, whatever, I'm going to ace your syllabus. I'm going to get out of here. And she flips out when he's like, oh, it's going to take you at least 15 years, like it took me to get to the point where I can be in a smart Hulk form and I can focus. And she's just like, no, I am not staying here for 15 years. I think at some point they make it clear in the storytelling of episode 1 that not only is Bruce lonely, but he's kind of being selfish. He's kind of trying to stress to her, oh, no, you have to stay here with me because you have to keep me company and I'll keep you company and I'll help you. And I think he meant to be nice that way. But I think the benefit that he got if she were to have believed him was that she has to be there with him for the next decade plus. And she's like, oh, no, I want my own life back. I love you, but I'm gone. So then he was like, let's teach you control so that maybe you can go back. I don't think you can go back. So when he puts her in the chamber and he threatens her life to kind of prove that anger, stress will make her automatically change whether she likes it or not, when she comes out of there, you see in the trailers, she busts through the door and he's like, oh, no. What you didn't see until you saw episode 1 was once she got out of that like room with all like the spinning knives and stuff, she comes out and he's like, oh, calm down. Like Natasha kind of had to do with him, like Black Widow had to do with him with the lullaby and calm down, big guy. Ooh. He starts doing that to her because that's what everyone had to do to him. And maybe he could get himself under control. But she's like, what's this? And I laugh because she's like, Why are you talking to me like a stray horse? Like, ooh, settle down, big guy. Shh. She's like, no, what is this weird stuff? You don't need to do that. I know what I'm doing. I was pissed, but the moment's over. I'm fine. And he's like, you have no alter ego. You're the only one in there, he asks. And he makes the point that he's had to struggle, Bruce Banner, with an alter ego too. It's not just all the physical stuff that comes with the Hulk and then your own emotional and or intellectual challenges with it. He had all of that, plus he had an alter ego, and that was the Hulk. The Hulk was always striving to take control or keep control, and he would always have to fight that alter ego. That's not what Jen's going through. Jen doesn't have anybody else in there with her. It's just her. And Bruce tells her, I think I'm jealous. So he's jealous of her. He's lonely. He wants her to stay. And she's like, nope. So she literally makes the point. This is a quote. She goes, now it feels like I've settled in. Like it did not take her long. But then again, she had a single-minded focus. I don't want to stay a monster. I don't want to be the Hulk at all. But if I have to, I want to get back to my life. And so he literally is like, you just took 10 years off my syllabus. And he's disappointed. You can see it in his face. I love how they animated his face. He had very complicated, intricate looks where he's kind of just struggling with the fact that she's better than him. She doesn't have the alter ego. She has her focus. She's going to leave. She's not going to stay there and keep him company. So he says, anger means death and destruction. And I'm telling you, when people see you as a monster, that's never going to go away. The anger that they feel for her, that she feels with their reactions. So Jen's like, fine, teach me how to be a Hulk so I can get back to my life. Okay. So in the very next scene, she's a regular human. I'm not sure how she got back there. But the Hulk is talking to her about mind, body, spirit training to put herself in balance. He mentioned dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT. I'm going to look into that more and see if that's something that's going to weave in more to the series and to the character. I might make a separate video about that. This is just me fresh after my first viewing. He does say that this is a clinical, not spiritual practice. He says it's more about presence, about accepting the situation that you're in. I do think that line's going to be important to her throughout this first season. They did say that they might give this show a second season. That's kind of on the table, but not guaranteed. So, but I think for season 1, what her cousin says to her is true. It is more about presence, about accepting the situation that you're currently in. Not being upset about what could have been or what happened or what didn't happen, just having an air of acceptance and taking the next best step that presents itself to you now. Superheroes have to do that on the fly, but so do we. So then she's asking, as he puts her through all this training, a lot of which, if you saw the trailers and you know what they're doing with throwing the rocks and the air horn training and all this stuff, he does establish that when she's at sleep or in a rest mode, she automatically goes back into Jennifer Walters' phase. But she's like, when am I going to ever use this as a lawyer? She doesn't care about the training for any other reason. She wants to go back to her life and her career. And he says, you don't get it. When you're like this, meaning in Hulk form, it's like you're putting a target on your back and on the backs of all the people that you care about. So her reaction to it is, cool. This is like another way that my life is ruined. I don't know how her life was ruined before this. That sounds like another open loop or a Chekhov's gun kind of statement. We're going to see it play out throughout the other episodes, the remaining 8 episodes in the series, how she might think that her life is troubled or ruined. I will say, again, when you go back to the beginning of this episode and the male attorney is trying to steal her closing statement and steal her case, it's like, no. I don't know that her life is ruined that way. I think it's a challenge. So I don't know what that statement's going to open the door to, but always, especially with Marvel, but any good storyteller, there's always a reason why they say what they say. You might have to go back and unpack in other episodes why she believes her life was otherwise ruined and then she became the She-Hulk. I know you might have seen in some of the trailers where Bruce is like, well, there are good parts to being a Hulk. Like, for example, you can metabolize a ton of alcohol, drink a tank load of alcohol. You're never going to get drunk. I think there's going to be a payoff with that later on in the series where somebody tries to drug her or get her really silly drunk, and they're going to find out, much to their sorrow, it's not going to matter. But another reason why the drinking part and the bar part's important is now we get to our third Easter egg that has to do with Iron Man, an Easter egg or a reference. It's nightfall, they're still drinking, and Bruce says to her, me and Tony built the bar. So Tony Stark. He said, Tony mostly drank, I built the bar, but he spent a lot of time complaining about Steve. So from all the other movies and such that Iron Man really did love and care for Steve Rogers. Civil War was very bitter for him. That killed him to have to fight with Steve. They were kind of like having a little bit of a bromance with each other at one point. But given the other two Easter eggs or references, and now you have this where Bruce was saying, oh, he always said one day he's going to swing by and take it back. Take the whole lab back that he built for millions and millions of dollars. You also see on the wooden countertop of the bar, Bruce's initials and Tony's initials are carved into the bar top. I just think they wouldn't have the faceplate, all the references, all the connections, and they're not going to, because now we're in the multiverse saga, bring back one of the most important Avengers ever who led the team more often than didn't. I think you have a hard time getting to the end of phase 6 where you have Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars, and you don't have some alternate universe version of Tony Stark there. Do they get back Robert Downey Jr.? Do they get Tom Cruise to come in as Ultimate Iron Man? I don't know. I think there's just too many open loops. They have hit this 4 times already in one episode about Iron Man. And then there's even more in the ending credits and stuff like that. I think he's coming back, and I don't think it's going to be too long from now. I'm not sure that they're going to bring him back while She-Hulk Attorney at Law Season 1's going, but I do think not too long from now, Iron Man does come back. Mark my words. They've just hit this way too many times to not doing it. So She-Hulk and Hulk toast each other because he was saying how Tony was there for him and they were drinking, and he was there for Tony, and they would drink to have a good time during a hard time, like during the blip, the 5 years that so many people were gone and Thanos had seemingly won. And so Jennifer says in her toast, a good time to having a hard time. I think the series is going to show a lot of struggles for her professionally, personally, as a superhero or not. She's going to have a hard time, but the series is going to be a romp, and she's going to have a good time while she's having a hard time. Okay, given some of the references she made, we're going to learn about how she thinks her life has ruined her at such a struggle before She-Hulk. All right. So as they're doing their mindfulness training the next day, there's a scene where she's sitting there, and the background, it seems like a pair of horns is sticking out of her head. So I know that the Matador and Manbull are coming, so that's like an Easter egg, because it's hard. You can't miss it. She's got horns coming out of her head as they're doing all these trainings. And then Jen just keeps saying, when can I leave? When am I done? And Bruce just keeps pushing the question away. And she says, I legitimately have a life. I'm not going to be a superhero. Well, we all know that she does, but she really wants no part of it. And I'll say that while she's having this conversation with Bruce, in the background, there's like a beach towel that's hanging up. And you tell me if you see something different. What I see is like a rough hand-drawn, like in a couple places, pattern that looks like Deadpool. Like when Deadpool in the first movie, he was creating cartoon pictures of himself. And then during the end credits, I think for both Deadpool movies, you saw like the crayon type drawings that Deadpool would do of himself. Like the beach towel had Deadpool faces on it that looked like that. And I was like, well, we all know that Deadpool's coming into the MCU proper. We all know that phase 5 and or phase 6 he's coming in. I'm sure on D3 they're going to be mentioning when Deadpool 3 is coming out. So I do think that she's not only breaking the fourth wall like Deadpool does, she did it long before him in the comics. But I do think she and Deadpool are definitely going to team up. So she's just like a dog with a bone about returning to her life as a lawyer, to the career that she says she spent years building. So she's a green lawyer, but she's not like a first year. I told you that. And she also wants to go back to the law loan that she's still paying a fortune for, her words. For me, it's been over 20 years as a lawyer, and I'm still paying that loan down. It's like hundreds of thousands of dollars to get one of these. So as an attorney, I do feel her pain on the law loan end of things, and not just the career that she spent building that I've, gone and done. I'm self-employed now for several years, but I worked for big firms, and it's big dollars, and it's a big life, and it's a corporate culture that you either love or you hate. She loved it, and she did well at it. She wants to go back. So then Bruce is like, no, but you have to stay with me because you have to learn about controlling your anger. And this is where Jessica Gao isn't just the showrunner. She wrote this. You see it in the credits. You can tell that a professional woman wrote this, and a female wrote about it from a professional female's perspective. Not necessarily per se a female attorney's, but it'll do. Jennifer says to Bruce, I control my anger all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when competent men explain my area of expertise to me and I'm equally competent, mansplaining, to use the vernacular, I have to be in control of my emotions or people will automatically call me emotional or difficult. And also it might just get me murdered. And this is important as a female. This resonates with you for a few reasons if you're a female viewer. Because, of course, it could get anybody murdered if they can't control their anger and they get into the wrong set of circumstances, right? Murder isn't always premeditated. In fact, most of the time, statistically speaking, it's not. It's manslaughter. Emotions run away with you. You didn't plan on killing that person, but you did. But here's the thing. Women are statistically speaking more likely. Go Google it. This isn't me being all sad or nothing. It's true. Women are more likely to be the subject of a murder, an assault, a sexual assault, a hostile work environment. And interestingly enough, because I've had to deal with this for clients of mine, the statistics show that the hostile work environment that many women have to face is actually not created by a man, but other women. I'm not saying men can't create hostile work environments. They do, but surprisingly, more women do it to a woman who's an outcast at the office. But if you're emotional, if you can't control yourself, all you do is fan the flames of the anger fire worse. So it's really hard for women. They have to control their emotions. She's right. So she concludes, I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you, Bruce. And that is so powerful for me as a female, let alone a female attorney watching this. I know it's going to resonate with a lot of women. So she literally shows Hulk, or her cousin, that she can go back and forth from human form to Hulk form on command. So she goes, guess I outgrew your binder, cuz I'm going back. And even though he pleads and he begs for her to stay, all she does is say, you're a cautionary tale in terms of your inability to control your emotions, the death and destruction that you've wreaked. She's like, you're a cautionary tale. Why would you want that life from me? So, and I'll note, she's got I Love Mexico on her t-shirt because they're on an island in Mexico that Tony bought and helped build the lab and everything there for Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner's got a t-shirt with the bear on it. That bear is a duplicate from the bear that's on the California state flag. So just in case you didn't know, I'm in New York, but I looked up the flag and I was like, oh, that's where I saw that from. So Bruce says, being a martyr, nailing himself to a cross, that's the price I pay for keeping the world safe. But his cousin very brightly says to him, get down off the cross, cuz we need the wood, because she's not going to be a martyr. She goes, as an attorney, I keep the world safe in my own way. So she's like, I don't have to be a superhero. I'm doing my part working for the DA's office. So she comes back. We come back to where she's going to go into that trial that she was rehearsing for at the beginning of the episode. She tells us, the audience, as she breaks the fourth wall again, my family knows, and Nikki, her paralegal and best friend, knows. No one else knows at this point. Well, Bruce obviously knows. She goes, I was right and Bruce was wrong. It's been months. I've been under control. I've been doing my life and I've been a professional. And I'm going to do this lawyer thing. It's a lawyer show. Like, she's very confident. This is not a superhero show. She goes into court across the way from where she's sitting. She's on the left side of the courtroom, plaintiff, or in this case, she's working for the DA's office, so she represents the people. The defendants on the right side with their counsel. Holden Holloway is sitting there. It's clear he's not her employer yet. He's representing the opposing side. But Holden Holloway in the comics and also in the Disney Plus series does become her employer. She works for, what is it? Goodman, Kurtzberg, Lieberman, and Holloway. That's the firm that she worked for. In the comics, they had both a New York and a California office. I know that this is out of California, the series, and so is the office and Holden Holloway. He's there and he's checking her out while she's confidently doing her statement. The male attorney that wanted to mansplain and ride on her coattails is just sitting there watching her. And she's doing her thing and she's coming across well. So well that Holden Holloway is taking note of her. But before she can conclude, Titania, who's her arch enemy in the comics, busts into the courtroom. She breaks down the wall, all this destruction, people are freaking. But here in the MCU, she doesn't know who She-Hulk is yet because she, there's all this destruction and Nikki comes up to her and says, go do your thing. Because obviously being a regular human attorney isn't going to stave off whatever this Titania creature is going to do. So Nikki takes her heels. As many women know, if you've got a good pair of shoes, you don't want to wreck them. These things can be very, very expensive. I don't know if the shoes were Louboutins. I didn't see the red underside, but what have you. I love this outfit. I don't want to ruin my shoes too. So Nikki takes the shoes. They make a big deal about the shoes. And then Jennifer hulks out and Titania's like, who the hell are you? And does she identify herself as She-Hulk? No. Does she give a superhero name that she somehow concocted herself? No. She goes, Jennifer Walters, attorney at law, because that's how she identifies. She doesn't care about this Hulk thing, right? So, and then of course she beats Titania up and the authorities come and they chain her up and whatever. And then the song plays as we go into the end credits and it's like, who's the girl? Be the girl, right? So it's like Jennifer Walters, whether she likes it or not, she goes back down into human form and she gets back into her shoes. She doesn't want to be barefoot. The shoes. But it's like, you're that girl. You have to be that girl. We go into the credits. I know that each time the credits are going to change. So right now the credits are reflecting a lot of what happened in that past episode. If you saw Loki season 1, some of the end credit background stays the same and some of it alters with every episode. This time around, you also see quite a bit of Iron Man being reflected or shown in some of that stuff. So again, I just think between the direct references and the Easter eggs, he's definitely coming back. Of course, you see Captain America in there. And it's funny because she was making the case, was Captain America still a virgin or not? She was pushing her cousin in the car ride before the Sakaar ship came. She was still talking about it when they were at the bar in Mexico in his private island getting drunk. And you see in the end credits, she's got, like an attorney would have, a big bulletin board, and she's got her pieces of evidence. Is he a virgin or is he not, up until a certain point in time? So finally, we get to the cut scene, or the stinger end credit scene. They're apparently going to have one of these for every single episode. And it turns out that it shows that they're drunk at the bar, she and her cousin, in Mexico. And finally, she like baits him, like an attorney would, into finally admitting, was he a virgin or was he not? And he's like, fine. Back in the 40s or whatever, he lost his virginity to a girl in the USO show. Before Peggy Carter, because there's always been this back and forth. Did he lose his virginity to Peggy Carter or not? So this is fan service. There was a strong theory that there was this one woman. Go back and watch the original Captain America movie. There was this one woman that there just seemed to be like this kind of relationship or background tension with. And it turns out apparently he had sex with her. So anyway, and Jennifer's like, yes, because as any good attorney will do in a courtroom or otherwise, if they want an answer, they're going to extract it out of you sooner or later. So that's kind of pitch perfect with that personality too. Sure, it's fan service. Sure, it solves or responds to a theorem that fans had, but it really shows good character development, because that's totally an attorney thing. I've been guilty of it too. So anyway, this was my breakdown of episode 1. The Easter eggs that I saw, I'm telling you, Iron Man's coming back. We just started to set things up with Titania. She's not done with her. I have another Easter egg based video in my playlist, linked in the show notes down below, live and on the replay. And I'm telling you, Titania is going to factor in bigger. And there's actually a Shakespearean Easter egg that I think is going to set down the whole framework for how this first season goes, at least on one level. And I can't wait to see. I've called a couple Easter eggs quite right with Miss Marvel. So let's see what I do here with She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Let me know if there's anything I missed, anything that you want answered, anything like that in the comments down below. Make sure you subscribe. We're going to have 8 more of these after parties every Thursday morning, Eastern Standard Time, after these episodes drop. And make sure you subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up, and I will talk to you later. Bye.